What secret will you never tell your parents? Pre-cell phone era, I answered the phone and it was my aunt, calling from Florida. My parents had planned a long driving trip to see her. She was calling to say that maybe now wasn't a good time to visit. It only took about 30 seconds for it to turn into a rant about not really wanting them in her house, to flat-out insults about every wrong they had ever done to her. When the rant ran out, I said, "They left an hour ago." My aunt said, "Let's just make this our little secret, okay?" And hung up. Who's crazier, your aunt or your parents? Had skipped school and the school called my dad to ask why I didn't show up. So he calls me and says, "Why, Hill, aren't you at school?" So I told him that I'm actually on a field trip and they should know that. And he says, "Okay, let me talk to your teacher." So I was downtown and there was no shortage of homeless people. So I asked one if he'd pretend to be my teacher. Her for $5, he sold it perfectly, and my dad apologized to me. Better call Saul. When I was a kid, we were on my dad's boat far out at sea. He asked me to take the wheel. After about 5 minutes, I saw a big log floating, and I steered into it and hit it with the prop hard. I had seen a cartoon where they did this, and it just turned the log into toothpicks. It didn't do that. We had to get towed in by the Coast Guard. For what it's worth, when I mowed the lawn as a kid, I like to imagine that the branches that fell off our cedar tree were snacks for the lawnmower. Pretty sure I dulled the fuck out of a lot of blades. I stole this tape they bought that taught couples some new techniques to spice up their sex life. They were demonstrated by 2 real people, so it was porn. I let a friend hold it, and he lost it. I'm sure they know, but I'll never admit it. I burned the house down, and not the Christmas tree. I left the lights on without putting water. I was playing with the dog, and we knocked over something. A spark was created, and then the fire, on Christmas Eve. I told my parents it just sparked and started. My parents got a divorce soon after that. Not sure if I caused that too, but life has been shitty since that point. Made out with one of my mom's friends. Looking back at it, I regret it and I'm not proud of it. She was super hot, but I'm glad it just stayed as making out multiple times over the course of the summer and nothing more. We almost had sex, but fortunately, I did not have condoms, and so I turned her down. Ultimately, it turns out she was fucking crazy, in my experience. She always seemed normal to everyone else, though. Nice try, Mom. My secrets wouldn't necessarily get me in trouble. It'd just make my parents more disappointed in me. Secret number 1, I was pretending to go to a friend's house, so my parents wouldn't take the computer away for becoming a recluse gamer. I'd get in my or their car, drive to the house of someone who used to be my friend, park across the street so it would look like I was there. Then I'd lay on the back floor of the car and play on my Game Boy. Going this far for a deception play really worked out. When it turned out they followed me one time to see if I was really driving to my friend's house, I would simply get up and drive home when it got too hot or cold in the car. Secret number 2. When my parents wanted me to go to my senior prom and I had no one to go with, I put on my dress clothes, asked my dad to borrow his truck so they would proudly think I was going to prom. Then I drove out to a Pizza Hut to pick up a large pizza and cinnamon sticks. I drove to a dark, empty parking lot and sat in the back seat of the truck, eating an entire large pizza and cinnamon sticks by myself while I played on my Game Boy in the dark. My Game Boy really got me through my isolated, stubbornly reclusive high school days. When I was younger, maybe 10 or 11, I had been eating bagels for a week straight. They were so fucking good. Cream cheese slathered all over. One morning, my dad said no more bagels for a few days, and I said okay, but when he went upstairs, I had a bagel. He'll never know. This made me laugh. Lol, this is so innocent. Reminds me of my childhood. When I was 10, I went on our old sailboat with my parents and sister for the weekend. When we got back, I ran ahead to the car while my parents unloaded at the dock. I fancied myself a locksmith, I guess, and decided to pick the lock on the trunk of our 1980s Caprice Classic with a stick. I decided to unlock the trunk of the car with a stick. Well, needless to say, it didn't work, and also I broke a stick off in the lock. So my parents get to the car, and for some reason the key doesn't work, and we have a giant pile of bags and large coolers. My dad proceeds to fiddle with the key and lock, tries to pry the trunk open, and cusses for what seems like hours. It's getting dark. Dad is still cussing. He finally manages to pry the rear of the back seat forward, and there is a tiny gap to the trunk. I'm convinced to crawl through into a pitch-black trunk and try to open it. I get in somehow. Eventually, I brace myself on my hands and knees, arch my back, and push as hard as I can, and the trunk pops open. We load up the trunk, tie it down with a bungee cord, and drive the 2 hours home. Dad is still cussing. I will never tell him. My former stepmom was very, very attractive, especially to high school-aged me. I would watch her shower every weekday morning as she got ready for work and I got ready for school. Definitely not my proudest moments, but that's my secret. When I was 14, I left the house at 1 in the morning to hang out with friends in an empty field and watch a meteor shower, which I had ironically been grounded from seeing with my family due to sneaking out to hang out in the woods. I went out my window, difficult, and needed help from my friends due to being a twig, and then came in through the back door at 3. left it unlocked. Nearly got caught, but told my dad I had simply been taking the dog out, which he believed since I'd done that before. Never snuck out again due to the scare nearly being caught gave me. I got so drunk and stoned one night I let a raccoon in the house because I thought it was my dog. I got the raccoon out, but the raccoon ripped up the couch. I just flipped the couch pillows over. It's been a year and they still haven't found out. LOL. As I was packing my bag that I was going to take to the hotel with my soon-to-be wife on our wedding night, my dad put a bottle of champagne in it and said it was to make things go easier the first night. I just said, well, thank you, as I was surprised that he didn't seem to at least suspect that we had been having sex for over 2 years. I wasn't going to tell him then, and I never did. It was me that pissed in the trash can next to the toilet and not the dog. I was 6. They still tell the story to this day because the dog was infamous for doing crazy shit. The age I was when I lost my virginity. They think I was 18, I was 15. A very fresh 15-year-old. I lost it in February, and my birthday is in November. Also, I've been involved in 2 different threesomes with 4 different women. At 17, I had one with my girlfriend and her best friend, and at 29, I had one with my wife and a stranger we found on Tinder. 12 years ago, I was moments from killing myself while they were home. I was in the back workshop with a barrel to my head. All I could think about was what I was about to put them through. I've only told my brother, sister-in-law, and my fiance. I can't bring myself to ever tell my parents. They have been through enough pain. I found out that my dad had a child with another woman after a one-night stand while married to my mother. I found out 2 years before eventually my mother found out. This led to their divorce. I was 8 years old when I found out. I guess I hoped that it would never come out, and we would live happily in ignorance. Probably why I internalize all of my feelings, and am messed up emotionally as an adult. Looking back, that's one fucked up secret for an 8 years old to keep. Actually, this is the first time I've told this secret. Kinda sad. I was an only child, age 10 or so, with my mom, and I was tired of her working all the time. So one day, I took her car keys and threw them into our heavily woodsy backyard, so she would spend more time with me and less at work. The next day, she freaked the fuck out, of course, and was downright distraught. She was eventually able to get a taxi to work, but I felt bad, so I went out to go find the keys I threw. Long story short, I couldn't find the keys, and she got fired from her good-paying job. We had to downgrade our house to a shitty apartment, and she had to work crazy amounts of overtime at a shitty grocery store, all because I threw her keys. I tried several times to tell her, but I just couldn't ever get the words out. I texted my mother's ex-boss back when I was 5 years old and asked him for an opportunity to return to her job because I didn't want her and my father to keep fighting. Her previous job was 900 kilometers away and can only go home for 2 weeks every 6 months. I deleted the text message immediately, but her ex-boss responded and she took the job. I only saw my mom twice a year then, but her and my father's relationship got better. They are both now happy in retirement. I was generally a really well-behaved kid, and I never got in much trouble. As a result, my parents trusted me way too much and would frequently leave to spend weekends with friends at the casino or on little trips. Most of the time, I just enjoyed having the house to just me and the dog and played video games and watched scary movies. But one time when I was in 9th grade, I mentioned to a friend that I had the house to myself the entire weekend. My parents had always warned me against saying that I had the house to myself around others for this exact reason. My friends convinced me to seize the opportunity, and we threw an absolute rager at the house and invited literally everyone we knew. I was a busboy at a restaurant, and I for some reason invited all the line cooks who were like in their 20s. Well, everyone and their brother came to my house that night. No exaggeration, probably over 60 people. The line cooks came and brought a shit ton of weed and alcohol and invited their friends once they realized we had a pool. It actually went fairly well, and I definitely gained some popularity points at school. And most of my friends and the line cooks stayed behind to help clean up before my parents came home. I told them I had some friends over, which they had said was okay as long as I told them who it was. But they could sort of tell some shit went down, but didn't quite know what. Eventually, my stepdad found a cooler with a red ring around the top of it that had been used for jungle juice, and he questioned me about it like an interrogator. But I held my ground. They called my friends and my friends' parents, and they didn't snitch either. I got in trouble because they knew I had some sort of get-together. But to this day, they have no idea the level of sheer havoc that took place that night.